Five, four, three, two, one. Hi, everyone. This is
Right.
Davey with the Athens City Commission on Disabilities, starting the Accessibility Committee. I'd like to go and call us to order. We have got a bit of a busy agenda today, which is mostly going to be follow-up from all the walk and roll audits that Rob so graciously walked around the heat of Athens to do while we zoomed in. So I really appreciate everyone being able to join us today. And if you're watching this at home on Facebook, feel free to leave comments and we'll take a look at them as well. So yeah, I think the first thing we should do is just kind of pull up our walk and roll audit sheet. Does everyone have access to that?
Diane, you're muted.
I resent it to a few people. Who else would like a copy of it? Does everyone else have it, or does anyone need it?
Yeah, and I was thinking it might be a good idea if if maybe I could share my screen so that everyone could look at it that way and we could work on it together.
Good thinking.
I also know that we have some pictures that we like inputted. Okay, I'm gonna push share screen. And I'm going to share screen 2. That way I can still look at you all. How is that looking? Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. And I'm really excited to have this done and worked on. So I guess I see Rob and Rachel and Noah and Diane also looking at this spreadsheet, so we can all kind of do it at the same time. So yeah, I guess Diane and Rob, do you want to kind of work us through and we can kind of update this as we go?
Sure. So I guess I'll start. So for those who hadn't seen this or weren't participating the last couple months, we did a live feed with me out on the street and broadcasting video, which kicked in and out, unfortunately, because of phone overheating, but it seemed to work okay. And then at the same time as I was going around, we were discussing the issues that I encountered and saw through the video and tried to document those in a spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet was updated by other folks that were watching. And I haven't had time yet to go through and try and make updates to those. So that's my intent, is to go through and try and clean it up and also then watch the videos. So I have the link to the video from the first meeting that Davey sent me. And the second one was recorded by the city. So that's something I can go back to and watch through the city's website or YouTube. And then sort of piece together details that we might have missed in the spreadsheet from watching the video again. So I've got some work ahead of me to do that, and I haven't gotten to it yet. But I didn't seem to have access to the spreadsheet. Thanks, Diane, for finding it and re-sharing it. So I do have access to it now. I guess the question here, Davey and Diane and others, is how much time do we want to spend in the meeting here trying to go through this, or should I take time before the next meeting to clean this up, add the content I need to add, and then maybe review it then?
I think
what are thoughts?
my thought, Rob, would be that we take about half an hour of today's meeting and try and get as far into it as we can, especially while we have while we have JW and Tiffany on here, and everyone else has some pretty good knowledge. And from there, I think we could kind of fine tune it and get it set up to be done.
Okay.
Um,
And I'm sort of hoping in the end, after we figure out what the details are, that we try to look for general, general impressions of things the city should be thinking about with all projects. That doesn't need to necessarily be this one, but just ways that they can move these ideas forward in the future.
yeah, and I think kind of like a overall synopsis that could be used amongst other locales as well.
Right.
Yeah, what do you, I guess Rachel, and there's two Rachels on here. Whenever you're going around uptown, because you often take people with echoing connections, what do you see in terms of accessibility?
I just noticed the main place we go uptown is to Passion Works. And on that street, I believe it's State Street. There's a section of brick there in their parking lot. It's really hard for us to get the shuttle into that parking lot, so we park on the street, either in the handicap accessible spot right in front of Passion Works, or I pull up a little bit between the entrance and exit of that parking lot to Passion Works and the apartments above. But there's a whole lot of brick there that has to be very difficult. I mean, it's difficult to walk on as it is, let alone push wheelchairs through. And then the sloping of that sidewalk, it's not like even to walk on. It's kind of angled to one side or the other.
The cross slope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you joined us for the first walk and roll, but not the second one. And I don't think I quite got all the feedback. So yeah, that's really helpful. And that's one thing that
Ian and Eli were with you for one of the walk-in strolls, but I was not.
Yeah, I see Eli there.
Yes, he's the other Rachel.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, and Eli's been pretty active and involved in this for the entire time, so I appreciate Eli. Okay, so I think we should just kind of go through and read it so that we are as accessible as possible. So this is the walk and roll. This one happened on 6/11/20. It's the Washington and State Street where they intersect. So we're going to add some pictures. I know we took a lot of pictures that we can add later, but this is State Street, the east side of Court Street and the north side of Court Street. So that's where Pyramid Hookah, Domino's is across the street. It's where, yeah, it's like where Hillel is. It's on that side of the street there. So looking at the building entrances, we noticed that the hookah lounge is level. Driveways are the only way to cross over to Domino's. There's no curb cuts. And I put Domino's itself is fine. I don't know what that means. Getting into Domino's.
I think that means the entrance.
Flat, right.
Yeah, the entrance was okay to get into, I think. So the building itself is fine. It's the sidewalk, getting up onto the sidewalk was the problem.
Okay. Parking, there's no accessible parking on this side of the street or at Domino's. This parking island should probably include an accessible parking space according to the ADA. And then curb cuts. Curb cuts don't meet the road according to the ADA. They're rounded instead of directed towards the other crosswalk. Bricks are damaged and uneven. There's cracked sidewalks. Crosswalks should be slightly textured to be different from the road. Stamped bricks concrete is preferred for crosswalks. Does that make sense to everyone? Does that make sense to you, JW?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And then surfaces, Rachel was talking about this, cracks in surfaces, different surfaces on sidewalk, on level, there's cracks, there's ways to route people around obstacles. We need ways to kind of route people around obstacles. Sometimes there's some obstacles that are sticking out right now. like bushes that go into the sidewalks that, maybe kind of stick out mid-height that people could walk into. Cross slopes are too far out. The sidewalk ends across from Zoe and becomes walking path, which should include a crosswalk to get across.
Great.
Okay, do you want to take over from there, Diane?
So am I on? I forget. Okay. So we talked about the crosswalks already. So the cross slope by where the bricks are level. I'm not sure what I wrote there. So the pitch was too high, so it made it difficult it wasn't. So I think the general idea was that when there are cross slopes, they're too steep and that it's difficult for people to walk across them. There's no signage for how you get into Domino's to let people know from an accessible route to get to into the building. There's no curb cuts or signage on how to get there. The crosswalk at the signals and design, I wasn't even sure if people go into Domino's. Like I always see them drive up, but not so much going in there. But
I've done both. Usually, I think I've only driven up once, so usually I walk in the front door. Mhm.
okay. So that, let's see. For the crosswalk signals and design, the crosswalk meets at the road. The corner has circular curve that meets the bricks. There's no truncated domes there to sort of say you're going into traffic. At the intersection, so part of it was that when you cross the street, there isn't a clear line, a pathway. So people know how to cross the road, how to get across. Let's see.
This is at the corner of State and Court, or in the middle of the block you're talking about there?
This is going between Domino's and across the street.
So it's at the middle of the block, not at the corner there,
Mhm.
near the gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. I don't go down that much. I usually stay on Court and cross there and over to that gas station of Valero's, whatever they call themselves, and walk down to Zoe's or whatever. I've never walked into Domino's. I like Domino's, but I never walked in.
Well,
Have them bring it to me.
there wasn't a clear path to get into it.
Yeah,
You would have a
interesting.
difficult time navigating that.
Interesting. Yeah, I need to check that out. I may walk in just for the heck of it next time I'm around there.
See.
Yeah, so
Or
just
try
watch.
to.
There are no curb cuts, so you have to make a step up the curb to get into the place.
Right.
Interesting.
And so one thing like on a larger scale that I think we'd like to add is just like the crosswalks themselves have like a slightly different texture. I think we're kind of advocating both for site reasons, but also for wheelchair accessibility, that instead of the traditional brick, that it's like a stamp brick that feels different on your feet, but it's smoother, so that you know where the crosswalks are, so that
Right.
you're able to kind of cross across the street and not end up like on an island somewhere.
Right. And also that they're like the white lines to make it clear how you are supposed to, like it would be both a texture difference to make it easier to cross, but also that it's clear if you're like at the other end of the street that you can see where it is that you would cross.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How far are we? Right? Are we on driveways, public right of ways, or are we down further?
I didn't write anything about steps or protruding objects, but that was sort of, that falls into the sometimes plants stick out kind of things.
Okay. And there's a bunch of notes down here.
So I wrote notes, let's see, in front of Domino's, no curb cuts. I think after a while it was hard for me to use the form, so.
Okay.
It's a sharp corner, there's no curb cuts until the driveway. It's a one-way street, the triangle isn't accessible at all. The crosswalk where the driveways intersect with the sidewalks. It would be good to think about the slope and crosswalk. I think we've talked about this already. And the lip between the changes of the street to the driveway, there are really big gaps there. So it's not meeting ADA. So this sort of reiterates some of what we've already said,
Okay.
that there's plant growth and that there are lots of cracks. The parking, there needs to be accessible parking.
Okay. So we were even thinking like planters or plants around the gas meter would kind of look nice.
Yeah, you know, I saw some images of some artists have painted whole different pictures around like gas meters and different things that are very clever. I didn't know it. I sent it to someone at Passionworks, but I thought it would be an interesting thing to look at as another option of how to solve some of those ugly things we have in town. I'll try to find the link to it.
So I think we're done with this section, and maybe we could we could just kind of roll through the next section, the next few sections as well. So the next section is of the walk and roll audit was State Street, which is east of Court and the south side. So this is the part with the gas station and Passion Works, Precision Imprints, and Zoe's. So we said on building entrances, the Vets Cafe and other business. Doors look okay. There's no door openers. Precision Imprint was okay, but the door goes down to the basement. Zoe has stairs. They have a ramp, but no sign to let people know that they have a ramp that they can bring out. This should be made level during the project. So I think that building would, if Zoe's there, if something else is there in the future, that would be pretty easy to make level. Apartments open by LaRue. By Passionworks, they have an elevator, but there's one step. On the other side, there is a ramp and an elevator to apartments.
So there is an accessible access from the parking lot for LaRue.
That's what we
apartment building.
But it wasn't like evident right away. We thought, oh, this isn't accessible, but then
Yep, exactly.
So I
A
think
sign would be helpful.
I think that we said there was a step to get in Precision Imprint, right?
there's not a step that's accessible, but the door that they've been using just goes down to the basement, so they're not really using the upstairs.
Okay.
Zoe's doesn't have its own parking, does it? It's just kind of find what you can.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just on-street parking, yeah.
Yeah.
And Zoe, 2 steps to enter.
Right.
Did we get that too? Zoe's has stairs.
Yeah, Zoe has stairs, and it's just 2 stairs, so it's not very high.
So one of the things we talked about was that you could be addressed with the sidewalk design, like that could be a place where there was a dual level sidewalk. I think that's what you pointed out, Rob, sorry. And that the Passionworks has, it doesn't, Passionworks actually at the sidewalk level is level. In the back it has a ramp, so I think it's okay. Oh, but the apartments had stairs. That's the thing we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just sort of cut in. You were talking to Davey.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I think we got the entrances, and we have kind of an idea for what we want the entrances to be, the 2-tiered system for things that could be made accessible. There's a part in terms of parking. There is an accessible spot by Passionworks. It could be potentially striped on both sides for getting out on both sides. And that's one thing that could be like an overall recommendation is if you're using a wheelchair and you get out of your driver's side door, then you're just like on the street if you like have a manual wheelchair that you're pulling out. So having that having some lines and kind of doing an indent right there, because the street is bigger than what it needs to be right now. Passionworks parking spot, and their lot needs a sign. So there is a spot with it inside of Passionworks, but there's not a sign that says it's an accessible spot. Additionally, curb next to the street spot is too high. It's close to a foot. This is a problem in a majority of the accessible spots in Athens. The actual curb is too high for van accessible spots. And the spot should have a way to get out the other side with the curb cut to get back on the sidewalk.
So Davey, you mentioned, I think you just said something about how the sidewalk should be wider. Did we capture that here somewhere? Because one of the things I recall from that being out there was that the street is really wide. It was originally probably designed as a two-way road, and it's been made one way. And so it's got tons of space for one lane of traffic. So they could easily widen the sidewalk and take up some of that extra space, which would help, especially when you start trying to build an access to get into Zoe's. So if you need to build a wider sidewalk, because part of it has to be ramped up to get into Zoe's, that would help a lot with being able to make that happen. So I think that one of the recommendations would be to widen the sidewalk so it can better accommodate accessible issues, and in particular, better access to the buildings.
Yeah, and I think I just added that the street is very wide, so sidewalk expansion would be ideal.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I see the comment now. The street is very wide, so sidewalk expansion would be ideal. Okay, got it.
And we had talked also about even using the accessible parking space, that the height was too high next to it, and that maybe it needed a cut into the sidewalk, like a way to let people get out easily, and to make that level with the sidewalk rather than I was trying to think, we had talked, because since that was such a wide space, we were trying to figure out where we could make parking spaces be like an indentation so you could drop people off more easily. Was that one of those places?
It was.
Mm-hmm. The whole sort of improved accessible design would be not to have a curb at all, right? That the sidewalk is level with the roadway. There's other concerns or other issues when you start doing that everywhere, but certain places that already exists in Athens, and how you do it in a situation like this, I'm not sure, because you might have to lower the sidewalk, and then that further makes the distance to the steps and the building even further, so it may cause more issues. But that idea of eliminating curbs and making sidewalk level with the roadway in some places makes sense. Maybe it does in particular for handicapped accessible parking spaces and things like that, where there's challenges with that idea though, I think, in the situation.
Yeah, that is. I mean, you don't want anybody who's blind to wander off and not
Right.
know the difference between those areas.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. We need,
because you
if it
don't,
were to happen,
even if there's nobody parking there and it's a wide open space, you don't know if you're in a street or not.
Right.
yeah, that's a good point. You definitely need some kind of texture change there, I think.
Right.
Would that solve that problem, a texture change?
Yeah, it would help, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's enough room to do like a smaller indentation and maybe still have, a curb cut in certain parts of it, but have a ramp going up into the sidewalk. And it's very level in this area, so this would be really an excellent place to do this spot.
Yeah, I think the one place I can think of something like this happened is in front of the church over on College Street is what I'm thinking. There's a like a
Oh,
Yeah.
right. They didn't mark it well though with the truncated domes. It's hard to tell where you're crossing the street and where you're going into the parking area on that particular one.
yeah, I'm trying
I
to,
thought it was hard to tell.
see if I can see what it looks like. I've never looked at it closely, but I have noticed that.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I wanted to ask again, has anybody used a wheelchair, tried to get into Domino's through the entrance? You know, it's not just getting in. Is it wide enough? Is it, have we done that?
Yeah, so
I
it's
don't-
it's wide enough, and the door is actually pretty accessible. It needs
Okay,
a-
good. So for a wheelchair user of different sizes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of doors don't have any opener though, so but that's a different project than this one.
Mhm. I can't
And I
remember if
was
that one
thinking-
had an opener. I think it did not.
It didn't.
So
I
by
just
the
think
way,
in
I'm
general, we
looking-
forget about the width of those chairs sometimes.
So I'm looking at the Google Street View image for that church over. It's at across from East Washington and
Yeah.
Congress or College and College,
Right.
and it does actually have a curb, but it could have easily been done without a curb at all around that pull off, and it would have worked better, I think. But and I think part of the intent with this was people could pull off and easily unload and load passengers. There was the concept, and not having a curb would make that work better. But especially, you know, in a handicapped for handicapped accessibility concerns, that would have been easier. But those kind of things I think are something that could be experimented with, and I've seen it other places, other cities.
Okay, so to kind of move back along, so I added a lot of information in the parking, and I think that's something to be cognizant about if we're designing more accessible parking spots, that we don't then make it more inaccessible for someone with a visual disability to not be able to know like where the street and where the sidewalk is. So I think we could have some more discussion about that as we move along. The curb cuts on College, whenever State Street gets all the way to College, there's a fire hydrant in the way, and there's no curb cut on the other side. So those are issues that, you know, this project may not go all the way that way, but those are issues. And then in general, like the curb cut going across Court Street, I don't even know what to say there. It just needs a lot of work.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that area just really needs everything.
That's one where I think myself or somebody took a short video of you crossing there and how you can see the slope is bad.
Yeah, I'll just put etc. There's just too much to even deal with there. And then
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of thing in principle we need to help the city understand what the requirements are, and they need to apply them across the entire project
yeah,
to fix
Right.
all those kind of issues. So ideally, they, you know, replace all the curb cuts or be rebuilt probably.
yeah, and I just think like, you know, in terms of like me or Noah or Eli, or you know, if Rachel's taken a big group of people uptown, it just makes sense for people to be able to get places easily and to not, you know, to not have to think about it too much for there to be parking. All of this is just going to make sense, but you're right. We need to really let city officials know and let the engineers know what we're looking for and what's ADA required as well, because it's not always being done.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For surfaces, so moving on to the surface section, on that part of the street and sidewalk. There's major cracks in the sidewalks. There's some cross slope issues in certain parts of it. Changes in surfaces by Passion Works and gas station are difficult to navigate. So it goes from concrete to brick to concrete. And a lot of those times there's lips, or, it's sloped in weird ways, or there's holes. And a lot of that's just going to be taken care of when new sidewalks put in, but we want to make sure there's no slope issue.
You know what, David? I don't even know what we do, what I'm about to say, but it's that chicken and egg things. It's like what's best for one group may not necessarily be best for another group or an individual. And this is an interesting one. And I'm not going against what you say. I think you're right, but there have been times when the city or someone has fixed a crack in the sidewalk and it has totally messed me up because I depended on that crack to know where I was. So it's like, what do you do with that, right? In the back of Schoonover, I sneak out the back door sometimes and go up that alley. And there used to be a crack back there in the little area, and they fixed it, and I was like, oh my God, am I in the alley yet? I need that crack to know where I'm at. So it's like, what do you do with that?
Right.
So just to give you an interesting perspective, when I go over to Zoe's, there's a couple of cracks that I depend on to know where I'm at. So it's like, all right, what do you do with that?
Well, maybe we need to find new markers for you that aren't.
I don't know. I'm just saying that's an interesting perspective.
But it is a different, right? It's your map.
Because we depend on those.
It's your map by using your feet.
Right. I have to hit certain things sometimes to know where I'm at.
Yeah,
that interesting?
I almost wonder if we can get certain textures, certain.
I don't know, but I just find it interesting.
Yeah, if there was a strip that that maybe had a different texture, and you knew how far that meant you were. No,
I think I would agree with fixing it, and I would just have to learn not to expect that crack. So I think we're right to fix it.
Yeah, and I think we can think outside the box a little.
No, I think it's right to fix it.
So JW, are you trying to find entrance? Would it be helpful to have a marker at the entrance of a building, like a truncated?
Yeah, I think that would be right. That's good, because you're right. Sometimes I was like, okay, my next door is Zoe's after this. Like when I go to the credit union on Union there, I know after that first dip in the sidewalk, the credit union's on my right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I depend on those kind of little things like that. But those are just my travel skills and tips that I use for me.
Right. Well, those are important.
Mm-hmm. But we have to adapt, and I think the smoother the better.
Through the other project I'm working on.
What did you say, Noah?
Say it again, Noah.
He's working on it. He's almost got it.
I am going to make recommendations for code through the other project I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good.
I just thought I'd throw that in. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people will say, "Oh, you're going to run into that wall," and I want to say to them, you know what? I'm actually looking for that wall.
What do you do when you go to? Have you gone, JW? Have you gone to places where it's been easier to find your way places because they've done something in the sidewalk, or?
That's a good question. Good question. I don't think so. I just think I create my own travel log and map,
Okay.
based on what's there.
You
But
just remember it.
That's a good question. Yeah, good one. So everybody has their trick of the trade. So I think, though, you're right, Davey, that we should fix it and smooth it out. And people like me just have to adapt to that. Like you fix it now, the next blind person who comes through there, they won't have to look for that crack because it won't be there. right?
Right,
So,
right.
so they'll find other ways to know where they are.
Absolutely. One thing that like I'm thinking is what if like at every business entrance or every building entrance there was like a slightly different texture outside, like maybe some stamped brick just in that where that entrance is.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
might
that's
be
what I
cool.
just said. Right.
Yeah, that
Something
might be
to
cool.
market.
But I could see that could get onerous too. So, but I just give you that perspective for what it's worth.
Yeah, something like that I think would be really, really cool and like, yeah, something that would, benefit a lot of people in
Mm-hmm.
different ways too.
Mm-hmm. It's just, it's just as simple as I know, like, oh, if I find that water fountain, then Diane's door is just 2 doors down. So it's little
That's right.
things like that that we use to adapt in traveling.
Right.
I just added that, I think, somewhere. So I added it on signage. I said we could possibly have stamped concrete outside building entrances.
Mm-hmm.
So if everything's all smooth,
Yeah,
then
I think, JW, this is Tiffany. I think the important thing to take away from what you're saying is fixing the sidewalks, making things safe for people
Yeah.
is appropriate, but also to keep in mind that especially those with vision issues need to have some sort of indicators. Otherwise,
Right.
you're just going to keep walking and not know unless you have in mind how many steps it is from here to there, so
yeah, if you use that approach, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And there's no one size fits all, it's just giving you that perspective,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so down to crosswalk signals and design.
What'd you say about signals? What's that?
Crosswalk signals and design. This is the next section after signage.
Right.
And we have written down no sidewalk on legal business side.
That's where that law firm is.
Right. Yes.
I can't think of where that is right now.
Is that
It's
Washington?
Next to Domino's.
Oh,
I think that's actually across the street. Is it across the street and
Oh, is
on
it
the
across
Domino
from there?
side?
yeah, I think it's that area between Domino's going towards, like, going the opposite direction of the oncoming traffic.
You're right.
Town?
So you towards the traffic light there, on that Domino's side. There's no sidewalk there.
Yeah, so the sidewalk just kind of stops. There's a fire hydrant in the middle of the sidewalk that is there. There's no curb cut. There's barely like to get into the parking lot there. It's a driveway, and that's not great because there's a big lip. So it would be nice to have appropriately marked crosswalk at that point to be able to cross. That's what we're saying.
This is fascinating to me because I've never walked past Zoe on that street.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would, now you're going to make me just go touring down there. I've never gone past.
So it's vastly improved, JW.
Okay.
It used to be in terrible shape.
Okay.
As you go down, it might be a little rough getting to the sort of next intersection there. But from there down, it's been rebuilt mostly. So you can go all the way down around the corner to the Democratic headquarters.
Okay.
Most of that sidewalk's been rebuilt in the last 2 years. So it's
I'm going to go take a stroll. This is fascinating to me. Huh.
So yeah, and we also said that there's poor drainage around that crosswalk at Court Street, where when it rains, it just kind of flows.
Yeah, that's a biggie. Ooh, puddles, love them.
Yeah.
just love them.
And then on the driveways, public rights of way at the gas station, there's a big slope in the driveway entrance. It would be helpful to have level sidewalks at the Valero gas station. And again, we have lots of room there because it's on the street. So we could have a wider
Yeah.
street with a better sidewalk, or sorry, a wider sidewalk, less street. If you have fire hydrants and stuff, plant some trees close to them. There's a lot of options there.
Yeah, that is my scariest part of that journey. If I'm walking over to Zoe's, crossing there at Court and State, and then doing that gas station side. That's my scariest part of that journey.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that kind of gets through the east side of State Street as it crosses Court. Now we're going to go over to the west side. So
I had-
right now, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I had one thought. One of the consultants we had worked with at one point talked about raising the crosswalk just a little bit, so that if there were drainage issues, the crosswalk itself wouldn't accumulate all of the water. Is that something they've ever talked about in the city? Does anyone know? Like, you don't have to raise it a lot because water just goes to the lowest point. But if it was just a little bit higher than the regular road, like a smooth kind of thing. Anyway, it's a thought.
Right.
Kind of like a flat speed bump. Is that what you're trying to talk about?
Yeah, like a flat speed bump. So the whole crosswalk, however wide it is, would be just
Right.
like an inch higher than the road,
I see.
so that water would not accumulate where people are walking and traversing.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You want to add that to the notes, Diane?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, I'll put it on the other thing. Let's see,
Okay.
raised.
And that would help a lot with that brick streets if they aren't going to repave them.
Right.
Just to have it to be solid there where the crosswalks are. That's a really great option.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it would almost act a little bit like a speed bump too, so it would
Yeah.
slow vehicles a
Right.
little bit potentially.
Yeah, I really love that idea.
How much you raise it, I mean, I've seen where crosswalks like that could be at the sidewalk level. And so to someone going across the street, there
Right.
may be other issues with this, but you wouldn't even need a curb cut necessarily if you built it that way.
Okay.
There may be other issues with, for example, JW might have difficulty with that. Not realizing he's crossing a street, it would still have to be textured
Truncated. Mhm.
appropriately, right? Truncated domes to make sure that people know that they're approaching the street and about to cross the street. But
And along with this is the idea of not putting the storm drainage right at the crosswalk, which
Right.
often happens.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
So
Right.
do not
Right.
look, and sometimes you can't help it because it's how it is built, but just
that's a
thinking
good
about that as a
comment.
concept.
I think that's a good general comment, Diane, is we should put that in here, that in general, that storm drainage should not be near the corners and near the crosswalks.
Right.
I'll put it in my
Some of
notes.
that may be rebuilt during the project, so if there's an opportunity to fix those things, they should be doing that.
Right.
Right.
Okay, sorry, those were just random thoughts, but in the same realm. Okay, do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's head on to the next one. So now we're at State Street on the west and south side of Court Street, where Casa Nueva and Artifacts is.
Right.
So building entrances, Artifacts is an okay entrance, but it's steep to get up to it. And there's a little gap at the door. Entrances to Casa have steps, except the Cantina entrance. This can be ramped pretty easily with this project. And Random House, which is another business further down the street, is the other issue. There are, I think, 2 or 3 steps to get into that entrance. And because it's, the street slants down towards Court Street, it would be easy to put in a ramp right there as well, so that there's an entrance. So that would be a two-tiered sidewalk solution right there as well. The other businesses on that side of the street are good. There's, yeah, there's a law office, I believe, and that's fine, and then a private residence. Parking, there's adequate bike parking is important to avoid putting bikes in bad spots. Right over here, there's often bikes that are tied up to parking meters, which is not great for anyone. So the parking spot up the street that's accessible has cracked sidewalks, and the curb is too high for van accessible parking.
Yeah, I really found my share of bikes tied up everywhere. Good Lord.
And I think that's one thing that we'd really like to get done, is to have like a really good set place that's wide enough and has enough room for people to park their bikes.
And those, JW had mentioned those scooters too at
Oh,
one
good.
point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
putting, you know,
Right.
marking that place for the scooters to be left instead of just randomly.
Right.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah.
That was
Is
crazy.
all the different kinds of domes through a town problem for you?
So did you say, could you repeat that one more time?
JW, is all the different kinds of domes through a town problem for you?
Is that for
There's lots of
JW,
different-
Noah? Yeah, so JW, did you hear Noah's question?
Yeah, I did. Say it again.
About the different directions and textures of domes? Are those a
Oh, the
problem
dumps.
for you?
Yeah, but, you know, they don't do a lot of.
JW, is all the different kinds of domes through a town problem for you?
No, actually, no, not for me. You know, they serve their purpose. You know, whether they're round or rougher, or so most of the time I appreciate them.
So long as they're facing the right direction.
Right.
That's helpful.
Okay, I added the information about, I guess I put this in the wrong spot, but I put also
Right.
scooters and bikes should have space around this area. In terms of surfaces, we need walk stands clear, and there's some trash cans and seating in the walk areas right now, and we want to get those moved out of the walking areas. And the surfaces outside of Random House are just really terrible. The bricks are, I put bad, but I included some extra A's.
Ooh.
Yeah, just if there's going to be, you know, bricks on the sidewalks, right? Cross slope and cross slope section, going down Court Street. The cross slope's just kind of bad in this area. I don't know how else to say it. It's, you know, how the buildings are set, they are higher than the street. And for the curb cuts to not be too high, there has to be a cross slope, and it just doesn't, you know, work very well.
Mhm. And this is up near the Southeast Ohio Historical Society, that one?
Yeah. Yeah, and
What
also
side are we on? The south side or the north? What are we on the south side here?
we're on the south side of.
Okay, still the south. All right.
Yeah, okay. And then we don't have anything under signage, but the crosswalk signals and design. Yeah, just, you know, the crosswalk should be pointed across the street at the next crosswalk. The sidewalk is steep. There's maybe some ways to like raise up the corner, or for that crosswalk to have a little bit of a raise. We're not sure if it can be included in this project, because that would just be a lot to move like a whole street around. But you know, maybe we could raise that street up there a little bit. That could work. I see.
I'm just amazed at, I mean, this is sort of an aside, but I'm just amazed at how many businesses in this town, you know, are so dependent on one or two steps for everything. I guess it was just in an era when nobody ever thought that there'd be a lot of wheelchair users out there. It just boggles my mind.
Yeah, that was it. People didn't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and narrow doorways.
Exactly. It's amazing. I guess
Well, it
this is
also
this is
was,
progress.
it was also a style. Sort
Yeah,
of
I got you. I got that.
the
I got
Carnegie
that.
Library, you're ascending into the heavens to get the knowledge.
I got that. Yeah, I
all
got
that
that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I bet that's right, Diane.
It was a style. It was
That's a
just
good point. You're right.
a
Yeah.
Greek, whatever, and yeah.
Yeah, the bricks and the hills and the stairs.
Yeah. It's part of the Athens feel
That's
thing.
it. That's it.
Okay. Let's look at, oh, so I think that kind of moves us out of this section. I think what we can do is we can go ahead and finish up the State Street section today. And then I think we had a couple other agenda items to talk about.
Well, just one quick comment about Signal. I finally pressed the mayor again and I said, should I keep mentioning that you're gonna really put an audible traffic sign there at Court and Union? He's like, please, I'm working it on. So he said, keep mentioning it. So one day, we'll see.
I'll put a note here so we don't forget it.
Great. I mean, I was like, I don't want to keep mentioning it if you're not going to do this. And he's like, no, please keep talking about it.
Is there another location besides Court and Union that needs one?
Diane, I think it's already there on your note,
What?
the talking crosswalks.
Oh, is it? Thanks. I missed it.
I mean, I'm sure there are, you know, Diane, I mean, certainly, probably like with Richland there, you know, probably, but I bet you there's a spot for that somewhere too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of potential to add in some talking crosswalks and
East State, I mean, good Lord.
yeah, I think all up and down Court Street and on State Street as well. Those are really busy intersections for people, and that would, with a lot of high traffic, high speed
Right.
parts.
I don't know if I mentioned this because I missed a couple meetings, but when I went to San Antonio, Texas in January, they had the best audible traffic lights I had ever seen in my life. They were amazing. I mean, just amazing. So clear and walk now, and it's okay. It was amazing downtown, right on the Riverwalk. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
JW, did you notice any other things about walking around in that area that?
Yeah, very level. Didn't have a lot of steps, didn't have a lot of curbs. They've really done a good job in downtown San Antonio. Very easy to get around down there.
They really have, and that, yeah, the Riverwalk is, you know, they had really did that a little bit more recently post ADA, and yeah, it's just really nice.
It is. Whew.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the north and west side of State
yes.
Street. Where it crosses. So this is where J Bar and Tony's is.
Tony's. Yes.
And then Tony's in a while. So starting at building entrances, there's a place called Good Rentals, which is the building there. It has 2 steps on the side. The Kismet, I think that's a clothing shop.
Huh.
The entrance is okay. Betty's is not accessible. It has several stairs. And also Slovaki's.
Yes.
Another one. And we just weren't sure that there was a way to make Betty's and Slovaki's buildings accessible. Am I correct?
Right.
I thought that was the one that Rob had pointed out. We could do the extra level, like the second level on the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah.
Get into the buildings.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
They were all that way.
Right,
Yeah, I
in
remember you talking
particular,
about that.
right. Hmm.
It
So,
was, I think that was to get into Obetti's that would help, right?
right,
Not
right.
going to completely fix the problem, but it would certainly help.
So I'll add a note here. Ed raised,
Yeah, I'll have to look at the video or go back and look at it again in person, one of the two, to figure out exactly what we had thought about there. But let me make a note on that. I'm putting in some comments in the sheet, by the way, if you haven't noticed.
okay,
So just
good.
to help me when I go back through here.
And what I can do is I have some pictures and some screenshots that I was taking from what you were showing, Rob, so I can import some of those. I have them all in a folder. The parking on this side of the street, so I added that Tony's could be made accessible easily, add a raised level to make business entrances accessible. On parking, there's no accessible spots on that side of the street. And I think there could be, and I think there probably should be one accessible spot.
Right.
And it's more level too, so I think there'd be some options. Curb cuts, it's actually really a pretty decent curb cut over on Congress and State Street. At Court, we would want some truncated zones, better surface on street, and LPI as well. What's LPI, Rob?
Yeah, what's that? Yeah.
I was just wondering that too.
Oh,
I don't know either.
Leading pedestrian interval.
What is it?
I was thinking it meant a business or something. So in other words, that's where the signal turns for the pedestrian before it turns for the cars. So you get a head start.
Oh, okay, I'll put it
They
in.
have them on some of the other intersections on Court, but not at this one apparently.
yeah, that would be.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, and I think we could.
So,
Building entrances, Tony's could be more accessible pretty easily.
so Rob, you know that those of us who are blind, without audible, strictly depend on the automobiles to tell us when to go and stop.
Oh, interesting.
And that's where an audible signal would help.
Yeah, because we wouldn't, unless there's a queue, we wouldn't know the LPI is for us.
Right.
You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it would help other users, but the audible signal would then make it also work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could get that, absolutely. But keep that in mind as LPI spring up. Keep that in mind for us, how much we depend on the traffic.
All right, so let me just say.
Totally dependent on it, actually.
I
I mean, if I walk up to a street and I'm depending on traffic on my right and there's no traffic, I'm very hesitant because I need that traffic on my right to turn and know, okay, it'll be my turn soon.
Okay. So moving down through, okay, leading pedestrian interval. Okay. So surfaces over by J-Bar. There's a basement entrance.
Wait, basement entrance to J-Bar?
I don't know.
I never go in there, but
we writing the same thing. I'll take my note.
So the surface is, I think there's a basement entrance for like storage or something, and it protrudes.
Okay.
I'll put that's what it is. It kind of protrudes out over there by Tony's.
Okay.
It's all protrudes.
Protruding, yeah.
Protruding, right. What a word, right?
Yeah. Slope and cross slope. And we have down there are good options for cross slope here, where, and then it doesn't finish. I think what we meant to say is where driveways intersect.
Right, the sidewalk.
That sounds right.
Driveway.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that can help me with parking lots and driveways when you have those on your left or right, and then the parking meters the opposite. You just got to be careful.
Yeah,
You'd like to trail on one side or the other, but the one side is, you know, the cars. The other side is the meters. So you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of tough designing a sidewalk
Right.
with driveways crossing it so that
That's
it
right.
works for everyone.
That's right. You
It
just
seems
gotta be
like what
cautious.
might make sense would be to have the part near the road where the ramp is, where the slope is on the driveway, and then have a long stretch as long as possible that's flat.
Right.
But
That makes
you don't
sense.
want the driveway to be too steep either. So there's trade-offs with that. It's definitely tricky, I think, to design that right.
It is.
Okay. And then just to finish off this section, the other thing we had is crosswalk design, signals and design. These could be talking crosswalks and push buttons, LPI at every intersection. Crosswalk signal at court should be closer, so it's kind of difficult to see, I think.
right, it wasn't at the corner, right.
At the corner.
Huh?
And all crosswalks should have talking crosswalks. So that kind of finishes off this. Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Rob. Rob just adding LPI for most pedestrian traffic, but not the visually impaired. This needs to have an audible signal.
Right.
And, you know, we want to roll this out so this becomes like a standardized kind of thing.
Right,
And
right.
no, and maybe then this could go into code. So anytime this is done, it's just done in this way.
Right. You
Right,
got it.
exactly.
Okay, so let's go. So yeah, I think we're scheduled to do this until 1:30 today. So I think we had a couple other things on the agenda. I know one of those things is there's a person named, I think her name's Rebecca Miller. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Okay.
There we go. So yeah, I think her name's Laura, either Laura or Rebecca, but we're trying to set up a phone call, and she is Age-Friendly Athens. Yeah, Rebecca Miller, and she works with the, let's see, Age-Friendly Athens is a new initiative that grew out of another group called Aging in Our Community. It's a community assessment program through the AARP. It's a way to help improve livability for everyone, but certainly for older adults. It's a 5-year process, so they're just getting started. There's 8 domains, one of which includes accessibility. So my thought is that we invite people from this group to, there's outdoor spaces and public places. There's also, yeah, I guess that would be the part that would intersect with their group. And I was going to invite them to join us because they're going to form committees themselves. But I think there's enough overlap within that group and our group to kind of work together. How does that sound to everyone?
That
Yeah,
sounds
why
good.
not? Sounds good.
Mhm.
Okay, Barry Dilly, who's on the commission, is involved in that. I think it would be Rebecca
Good.
and one other person would join us.
Yeah, sure.
And so the AARP is really pushing the envelope, I think, is one of the keys here. So they're realizing that cities need to be designed for people as they age. And it's the same issues we're talking about here. It's making things accessible for the most part. There's social issues and things too, but a lot of it's about physically fixing cities so that they work better for people as they age and for people with accessibility
that
issues.
You make it easy to park and it's not too far to get to places and
Right, not too far to get to places. They even talk about in a whole section, one of the domains I think it is about adding accessory dwelling units. So allowing people to put in a granny flat, quote unquote, in their yard, in their backyard, So they can add an apartment there that's ground level, so somebody could rent that and maybe be aging in place there, or what a landowner could do is build that apartment in the back and then move into it themselves and rent out their house. Things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. Because a lot of the houses here aren't very accessible. Mine's
Right.
terribly inaccessible.
Yeah,
I
mine's
love
not.
this house,
Yeah,
but
I agree.
when I get older, it's going to be hard to age in place here.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Let the
Absolutely.
boomers strike again, buddy.
So I'm excited about the city adopting the AARP strategies
Yeah,
and working with that, because they talk about complete streets, which is a big
yeah.
issue I have and something we talked about here, and accessibility and accessory dwelling units and parks and places, and all those things are ways to make our city better. And so it's good to see that angle, using that angle to justify it is good. So.
Mhm.
No, I like that, Rob. And that one of the reasons I like this kind of work is, yeah, we're doing it with a certain group in mind, but it ultimately becomes good for most, if not everybody.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we're really trying to do as we work through this is really think about, bicycle accessibility, stroller accessibility, like all these things kind of tie together. And the more accessible an urban space that we can create, the better.
Right. Yep.
So actually, there's an event going on in September. It's a 2-day event. I think it's like a virtual conference. It's 4 days, 4 hours on the 15th and 16th each, so 8 hours total, I think. It's an AARP event. It's about livable cities or something like that. I forget what they call it exactly. It's free, which is nice. If anybody is interested in attending it, I'll send a link out. I've already signed up. I sent the info to Paul Logue, but it's the kind of thing that I think we could all benefit knowing more about what AARP strategies are, because they're going to be things the city is looking at trying to implement. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll invite the AARP person to our next meeting as well. And if you could send that information out to the accessibility committee, if not, maybe the full commission. If you wanted to send it to Diane could distribute it to everyone. I think that could be great.
Is there a price for it, Rob? Registration?
It is free.
Oh, nice. Well, I mean,
And
either way, that's great. Yeah, I'm very interested.
so I'm trying to see what they call it. Livable Communities Transportation Workshop.
Wow. Yeah, send that out
Free
to
virtual gathering of AARP staff, volunteers, community partners, and livability practitioners.
Okay.
So 3 core themes: safety, accessibility, and resilience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, send that out to Diane. She can share. I send her stuff all the time to share with all of us. So
Yep. I got a easy to do.
I can
Okay.
pass that on to others. That's a fascinating topic.
So that's all I had on the agenda today, except for we were supposed to approve our minutes from last meeting. I realized I don't think I sent those out. I sent them out to the full commission when we had the full commission. And I guess we can kind of skip that this time, because I basically just said we took notes on accessibility while doing a walk and roll. But for this, thank you, Rob. For this, I think we should just kind of take some general notes about what's happening and what we're working on, and we can kind of refer back to the spreadsheet.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that we have notes for the next meeting that we can send out ahead of time.
Mhm.
For one other thing, okay, so let's jot down some action steps before the next meeting, which is September the 10th. So I'm going to import some of my pictures and try and clean up some of the language. And also I can give like a first draft of trying to get together an overview of what we're looking for from the city on accessibility on all sidewalk projects. So I can do a first draft of that. Does that sound good?
Okay. And then I can edit too after.
Yeah,
I'm an okay writer, but I think everyone else is a much better writer here. And then Rob, you said you're gonna kind of go through a little bit and import some of what you have and add some additional notes.
Yeah, so I'll look at the videos and see if there's things we missed or those kind of things as well. So I'll go through that. That'll be my major task here, I think.
Okay, and I think what we can do during the next meeting on September 10th is we can kind of work our way through Washington Street. We can finish that up, and then just kind of put a bow on this project for now. That would be like my hope. We may have a little bit more work to do, and we're not in a rush to finish this by any means.
Martha Anderson.
Getting a bunch of calls. And let's see here. What else do we need to get done? Anything else that you can think of, Noah? No, if you want to share, yeah, just as you're working on like code enforcement changes and that sort of thing, if you want to give us just like updates, because I know that's kind of a special project that you've been working on with Paul Logue and other people at the city. I think that's just, could be a real game changer for the city as well. Do you have anything to add, Eli? Okay, I don't think so. I think Eli is still on mute there. Oh, there we go. Anything to add, Eli?
Keep it in the circle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you out and being able to do this in person again, Eli.
Us
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Anything else from you, Rachel?
No, this has been good, guys. Thank you all for sharing today.
Thank you. Any other things from you, JW?
I'm good. This is great.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. I know, you're not technically assigned to this commission or to this committee, JW, but we really appreciate you joining us because you add a lot of good insight to, from your particular ability perspective. So
Right.
yeah,
Thank you much. Obviously, I
Yes.
try not to speak for all blind people, but I can give you my perspective. So,
We'll
It's
take
great to have you involved. So Davey, one more thing that was on the agenda that I can cover very briefly is we were talking about updates to reporting to the city. So that's all changed. Maybe we mentioned that at a previous meeting that the city was eliminating or stopped using the City Source app.
Oh, right.
They are,
Right.
App they're using now?
so Scott Thompson, who helps run the technology for these meetings, is the one from the city that's been in charge of bringing the next step online, which is another app called Click See Fix. And it is looks better than what the old City Source app was. It might be more accessible, but I'm not sure about some of those details yet. It is certainly much more flexible for the city. It's a company that's directly supporting updates and customization, whereas the old app wasn't something the city could make changes to.
Okay.
And that's one of the main reasons they dumped it.
Okay, gotcha. I'm trying to find my app store. Oh, there it is. How do you spell this?
See, click, fix, one word actually.
C, like the letter C, click.
SEE
Ah.
CLICKFIX. So see, click,
This
click,
is
fix.
Ryan from the
There-
government
there
channel. It
is
hasn't
a-
officially come out yet.
Okay, thanks,
Yes.
Brian.
So there's a generic app you can actually download now, and you could actually submit things and share them with your quote neighbors. If somebody that was a neighbor was using that app, they could see them, but not likely, right? However, the city is going to be implementing this capability, and it sounds like it's going live soon. Scott said in the next week or so, they might be making it public.
I think we just heard someone from the government channel or from Scott that jumped in here. Did we hear from one of you?
I'm about to start phase 2 of the sidewalk part of the project. Phase 2 has a few parts to it.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome.
So
Yeah,
Scott,
hey,
you want to
David.
comment?
This is Ryan from the government. Scott's on here. Scott, you can let him know.
That's right. Yeah, we're looking to get launched in the next week or so. So there'll be announcements put out. So it's coming real soon.
Okay, well, we're happy to spread the word and to start using it when it's ready
Sure.
to go.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so would it make
Scott, is there a
sense?
particular reason for this switch? Is it more economical? Is it more robust?
Robust, supported, flexible. There's a number of reasons. Yeah,
Okay.
that we made the
All right.
switch.
The support on the last app, just as time went on, really decreased. Whereas this new application, these people seem to be updating it constantly, unlike the old one. So that's a big reason.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have confidence that if somebody has a user problem or an accessibility issue, that we can send it on and it'll at least be heard. Where that wasn't the issue. I was not getting even basic emails returned at all, let alone timely. So
right.
I was out working this morning, actually.
Sorry, Noah, go ahead.
I was just out working this morning, actually.
Early this morning, apparently.
I have one other question, and that was the follow-up to the letter. David, did you ever get a response from the person at the city that we met with?
The code enforcement person?
Yeah, because we were going to have him send letters to businesses or something.
Yeah, I sent a couple of follow-ups and have not heard back from him. And this was during like COVID times. Maybe he was, not available or just, too much work going on. Who knows? But
right.
I think that could be good. If you want to add that as an action step for me, Diane, just to follow up again with them.
What was his name again?
Anyone remember?
I forget his name.
Isn't it David?
Oh, is it David Riggs, code director?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll follow up with him again.
Okay.
I'll CC everyone so he knows that we're waiting.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't want us to forget it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing to work together with code enforcement to try and get some of the ADA guidelines, especially for new or projects that are done that don't fall within the, I think, Title 40 or something projects, I think was what he was explaining. So ways just to work with code enforcement on doing that and sending out some letters would be really helpful.
And for the city plan that that I had sent out a copy to the commission, which committee would be working on that to try to put forth recommendations?
For recommendations for the city plan.
Right. If we did a commission response and suggestions, which
when is it due, Diane? I think it's due on the 25th.
It sounded like this was the last call for comments.
Yeah, when's the last date that we can make some comments?
I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay,
so I'll
yeah,
put that on my
Seems like
list.
this is an appropriate committee. And
yeah, this might be.
Maybe education and outreach, but certainly this one.
What I would move that we do, Diane, is that we send out what we have currently to the full commission and get feedback, and then send full commission feedback from those comments that we get.
Okay, I could try to see if I can pull together the different comments people have made so far.
That sounds great. And then, yeah, if you want to just maybe, if we can, we could maybe take a few minutes during our commission meeting next Wednesday to talk about it and send it in. But if we don't have enough time, that way we could just say, hey, get us all your comments by Friday, and we'll just go ahead and send it on to Paul.
Okay.
because I think there's some really good stuff in there, but I think we could add a little bit more in terms of housing and transportation, which we talked about.
Right. And I think there might be some things in other sections, so we just have to make sure they haven't already addressed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That sounds great. I would like to go ahead and move to close this August meeting of the Accessibility Committee. All right. Sound good to everybody?
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Good to see everyone.
I loved it. Great.
Bye.
Thanks for being here.